able to organize these protests in one of the many open places in Cairo, and no doubt international media would have gone. We had sent teams there to report on them as well. But what ended up happening is these individuals, the pro-Mubarak supporters, came to Tahrir Square. They came on horseback. They came on back. They brought with them sticks. They brought with them knives. All of that has been captured on footage. So it really raises the question, what were the motivations behind this? Now, what really, just to add one final point if I can, what really made it very interesting was that immediately, almost as soon as the battle here began, Egyptian state media almost suddenly, on cue, started to interpret these events as pro-stability protests, trying to reclaim the city, trying to reinstate stability and security. And in fact, one point of the day, the Egyptian state television was running news that, in fact, Liberation Square or Tahrir Square had become completely emptied of the so-called troublemakers or the protesters, saying that it had been cleared out. Now, anyone standing here today will tell you that was an absolute false report by Egyptian media.
You've raised a very good point, and I want to put it to Thomas Gorgesian in the studio here. The motivation for those pro-Mubarak supporters to come out in such force yesterday, what do you think it was in the end? What tipped them into the equation?
There are different explanations of their motivation. I mean, first, maybe simply they are just asked to do it. First, I mean, it's like people who are ready to do anything for their lords or bosses, whoever, to do it. Second, of course, there are this emotional feeling of that they say, okay, we can decide, okay, already the president was explaining this way at least. The president already said he's going to stay for 6 months or for a certain time at the end of his term. So why other people are pushing to do it now? Third thing, of course, it was simply motivated simply by people's needs for money or whatever to be asked. Is, as always, we know it in this battle of the ground, we said people are like sometimes paid to do the things, and we don't know. I mean, we don't know. I mean,
the combination of all these things that brings...
I mean, it's always a combination of all things, and then in the same time we have to see it in a bigger perspective. Usually, you know, it's like for the last 3 hours we are talking about, okay, Tahrir Square in Cairo, and what's going on in Cairo, we don't know. What's going on in Alexandria or Suez or other places, which was like a battle of grounds over the last 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, or a week, nobody knows. And of course, there is always this momentum, which is we are talking about it, and you are trying to figure out from your questioning on the people on the ground, which is if people are increasing or not. Is this million thing, 2 million, whatever was like Tuesday night was there? Is going to happen today or tomorrow? Because tomorrow is another day, you know. It's what we call it the D-Day, which is the departure Friday. Friday, which was called like that. Okay, people are pro-democracy demonstrators are calling like that. And the question was yesterday or the day before yesterday, and it was exchanged as a communication, is going to be in Tahrir or going to other one of the presidential palaces. They will be led to move to those places or be crushed by forces or whatever.
So unpredictable, isn't it? In fact, the split screen right now tells that story of contrast, I guess, and unpredictability. On the left of your screen, the crowds gathering today in Tahrir Square. On the right, the violence from yesterday as those pro-Mubarak supporters came out and fought with the pro-democracy supporters. And it speaks to the whole story since things really kicked off, if I can use that phrase, last Friday between the police and the demonstrators, is the fact that this has ebbed and flowed. This has changed. Until Wednesday, the pictures on the right of your screen, the anti-government demonstrations had been relatively peaceful. But it really all changed, as I said, when the pro-Mubarak supporters tried to get into Liberation Square, into Tahrir Square, and it all changed. Alan Fisher wraps up all of that for us.
Moving into position, the army in Cairo is now trying to keep both sides apart. Clashes between pro and anti-Mubarak supporters have continued since dawn. There's a clear sign tension is very high. There are reports of pro-government supporters moving towards the city centre in numbers, armed with knives and sticks. In Tahrir Square, the anti-Mubarak demonstrators have been building barricades, preparing for the battle they believe is to come. They insist they're not leaving until they get what they want, the removal of President Hosni Mubarak. Throughout the night, the running battles between the two sides continue. Gunfire could be heard in various parts of the city centre. Cars were burnt out, petrol bombs thrown. The injured dragged away. Speaking to Al Jazeera, one anti-Mubarak protester described the events of the night.
We have many injured people. It will be very hard to move them. And we know, everyone in the square knows, if we decided to give in now, they will hunt us one by one. We've been through this. We know it. They are shooting. There are people, there are some of the thugs with rifles on the bridge, and they shot at our demonstrators. Like the latest of our dead protesters, he was shot right through the head. I had two friends watching this happen.
The Egyptian army has been criticised internationally for standing by while Wednesday's violence raged. What it does now, how it acts, how it responds, will shape the future of this battle and perhaps Egypt itself. Alan Fisher, Al Jazeera.
And from that violence of Wednesday night to this live, more ground shot level of ground level shot, I should say, of Tahrir Square. And broadly speaking, you'd say it's quite quiet there, but still the crowds continue to come in. And as we saw on Wednesday, this situation of people gathering to protest can fast turn into something very different. And we've got reports of scuffles breaking out in other parts of the city, of pro-Mubarak supporters heading towards Tahrir Square. That tank that's interesting, isn't it? Sorry, I'm just being told something in my ear there. Just repeat that. We're hearing, forgive the silence there, I'm just being told on my ear that Egypt's Prime Minister Ahmed Shafiq has apparently apologised for the violence against the pro-democracy supporters on Wednesday. Now that's quite something for him to come out publicly and say that, and I'm sure it's something that the pro-democracy supporters would want to hear, however late it is, given that people did die in those protests yesterday. But that's word that the Prime Minister of Egypt, Ahmed Shafiq, I should say, who spoke recently, according to the Associated Press, has apologised for the violence that happened yesterday between the pro-Mubarak supporters and the pro-democracy supporters. That's interesting. We'll keep an eye on that one. Just seeing a few news flashes on my screen at the moment. That's coming through from the Associated Press. Back to the live shot, though. There, as I was saying before, we are getting reports of scuffles and skirmishes again, and talk that more pro-Mubarak supporters are heading in again. So that brings back the unpredictable nature of all of this. What might we see later on? No one expected to see what happened yesterday. The unpredictable nature comes in again. For those of you just joining us on Al Jazeera at 1:15 the hour, just a rundown of some of the latest developments in Egypt. The government had denied it was involved in any of the recent violence, but as we've just heard through the Associated Press, that Prime Minister Ahmed Shafiq has apologised for that violence, which led to the deaths of up to 7 people yesterday. That is Wednesday. Also reports of supporters of the president moving towards Tahrir Square there, carrying knives and sticks, soldiers separating the opposing groups, creating a buffer zone. You see it there in an attempt to stop the violence between them. That sort of violence when people were spilling through. Forgive me, I'm just going to ask my director to go back to that live shot we had before, because something changed. I was just mentioning this before. Well, that tank's actually back there now, but not long ago... Sorry, these are earlier pictures. Have we got the live shot? There was a shot earlier, hopefully we'll come back to it at some point. There it is. The tank's gone. Now, no word on why it's gone there, but that tank had been sitting there for at least the last couple of hours, I'd say, if not longer there. So interesting to see, we'll find out where that's headed off to. But still the buffer zone. You see it there very much. The army in place, maintaining a presence, but not taking a side, not involving itself. If we saw scenes anything like we saw yesterday, you'd wonder how long the army can actually hold back. Let's have a look at some more pictures from Wednesday, the violence which erupted once the pro-Mubarak supporters entered the fray. The tanks on the streets. On a modern capital of a modern Arabian city, it's still quite hard to imagine that this is going on the streets of Cairo. But it's been going on for up to 10 days now, and there's no real end in sight. And the thing to remember with this is the knock-on effect. A lot of people say this really started in Tunisia. The Egyptians saw what happened there. Now we're seeing Yemen, similar scenes of protest. It has a knock-on effect, it seems, throughout the Arab world. And a lot of governments, you'd imagine, would be sitting there wondering, is it their turn next? On the line, Mohammed Al-Qadhi, who is a foreign correspondent for the national newspaper in Abu Dhabi, to talk us through what we're seeing in Yemen right now. Are these people energized by what they've seen in Egypt, just as the Egyptians were energized by what they saw in Tunisia?
Definitely. I mean, this fervor has spread to different countries, including Yemen, and they have been inspired. And today, I have been at the protest of the opposition groups or coalition, and they have been raising posters for Mohammed Bouazizi, the guy who set himself on fire in Tunisia and started this revolution across the region. So, I mean, this has been inspiring people in different places, including Yemen, and I have spoken to people today, and I have asked young people, I told them, are you ready to start some kind of movement like what happened in Egypt? And they said, yes, we are ready to do that. And but I think, you know, after the initiative that President Saleh made yesterday, in which he vowed and he said that he's not seeking re-election, and he's not planning also to transfer power to his son, as well as withdrawing the package of constitutional amendments from which his party approved them in last month in the parliament, which would allow him to run several times without element. So this is a good signal, and the opposition said today, opposition leaders I have talked to, they said this is not enough. We need some kind of guarantees that all our agreements that we started and earlier, they should be, carried out with some kind. They were hinting to some kind of Arab and regional, patronage for any dialogue that is going to take place